Captain Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck of Harmony 1, watching the massive alien ship approach through the stars. The vessel looked like nothing humans had ever built. It was smooth and white, shaped like a teardrop made of crystal. Blue lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that seemed almost alive. "Hard to believe this is really happening," said Dr. Lisa Hamilton as she joined him at the window. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and excited eyes. For 20 years she had studied the possibility of alien life. Now that life was coming to meet them, Jake nodded slowly. He was a military man, trained to be careful and think about dangers. But even he felt amazed by what he was seeing. "The whole galaxy is about to change," he said. The alien ship docked with their station without making a sound. Jake had seen many ships dock before, but human ships always bumped and scraped a little. This one moved like it was floating on air. The docking tube sealed perfectly on the first try. Admiral Charles Baker's voice came through the communication system. "All personnel, prepare for first contact. Remember, this is the most important day in human history. Do not mess this up." Jake smiled a little. Baker was old and tough, the kind of man who had spent his whole life protecting Earth. The Admiral did not trust easily, and Jake knew he was not happy about aliens coming to visit. But orders were orders, and today they were making history. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. 3 figures stepped through, and Jake felt his breath catch in his throat. The aliens were tall, much taller than humans, with long, thin bodies that seemed to glow with their own light. Their skin looked like it was made of pale crystal, and their faces were beautiful in a way that made Jake think of ancient statues. They moved without making any noise, their feet barely touching the ground. The one in front stepped forward and spoke in perfect English. "Greetings, children of Earth. I am Veltar Nethys, speaking for the Zephyrian Collective. We come in peace and friendship." Dr. Hamilton stepped forward, trying not to stare. "Welcome to Harmony 1. I am Dr. Lisa Hamilton, and this is Captain Jake Morrison. We are honored to meet you." Veltar Nethys smiled, and when he did, his whole face seemed to shine brighter. "The honor is ours, Dr. Hamilton. We have watched your species for many years. You have grown so much so quickly. It is time for you to join the greater community of worlds." Over the next few hours, Jake listened as the aliens explained their purpose. The Zephyrian Collective was a group of peaceful worlds that had ended war thousands of years ago. They traveled the galaxy, looking for younger species who were ready to learn and grow. They offered technology, knowledge, and friendship to those who wanted it. "We do not force our gifts on anyone," Veltar explained as they sat in the station's main meeting room. "We only offer what we have learned to those who seek peace as we do." The gifts they offered made Jake's head spin. Clean energy that could power entire cities without pollution. Medicine that could cure diseases humans had fought for centuries. Most amazing of all, they offered the secret of traveling between stars without using the dangerous jump gates that sometimes failed and destroyed ships. Dr. Hamilton asked question after question about Zephyrian science and culture. The aliens answered everything with patience and wisdom. They spoke of worlds where no one went hungry, where everyone worked together for the good of all. They had no armies because they had no enemies. They had no crime because they had learned to understand each other's minds. "Your species shows great promise," Veltar told them. "You have survived wars and disasters. You have learned to work together when you must. But you still fight among yourselves too often. We can help you move beyond that." Jake found himself wanting to believe everything the aliens said. They seemed so wise, so peaceful. When Veltar looked at him, Jake felt like the alien could see into his soul and found only kindness there. But something nagged at the back of his mind. Maybe it was his military training, or maybe it was just instinct. The aliens were perfect, too perfect. They never seemed angry or frustrated, even when asked the same questions many times. They smiled at everything, agreed with everything. It felt strange. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez was working in the communication center when Jake found her later that day. She was young but very smart, the kind of officer who noticed things others missed. "What do you think of our visitors?" Jake asked her. Amy looked around to make sure they were alone. "They're impressive, sir. But something feels off about their communication systems. The signals they use are much more complex than they need to be for simple talking. It's like they're sending multiple messages at the same time. Jake felt that nagging feeling grow stronger. Keep monitoring their communications, Lieutenant, but be careful about it. Meanwhile, Admiral Baker was meeting with Earth's political leaders through secure video links. Jake could see the Admiral was not happy, even though the politicians were excited about the alien gifts. "I don't like it," Baker said after the call ended. "They show up offering everything we've ever wanted, and they want nothing in return except friendship. Nobody gives away that much for free." "Maybe they're just genuinely peaceful," Jake suggested, though he was not sure he believed it himself. Baker shook his head. "In 40 years of military service, I've learned that when something seems too good to be true, it usually is. Keep your eyes open, Captain. Watch everything they do." Over the next few weeks, the first agreements were signed. Earth's leaders were so excited they could barely contain themselves. The Zephyrians would build embassies on Earth and begin sharing their technology slowly, to help humans adjust to such advanced knowledge. The aliens worked quickly and efficiently. Their embassy buildings grew from the ground like plants, made of the same crystal-like material as their ships. They brought samples of their medicine and energy technology, starting small to prove they worked as promised. Dr. Hamilton spent every day with the Zephyrian scientists, learning about their biology and culture. She was amazed by how advanced they were, but also by how kind and gentle they seemed. They never raised their voices or showed anger even when humans made mistakes or asked stupid questions. "They're remarkable," she told Jake one evening. "I've never met any being so perfectly peaceful. It's like they've evolved beyond the need for conflict." Jake nodded, but he kept thinking about what Amy had said about their communications. And he kept thinking about Admiral Baker's warnings. The aliens were wonderful, but they were also completely unknown. Humans were trusting them with their future based on nothing but pretty words and impressive technology. As the weeks passed, more Zephyrian ships arrived. They said they were bringing supplies and more diplomats, but Jake noticed they were also bringing a lot of equipment that nobody explained. When he asked about it, Veltar just smiled and said it was for building better communication systems between their species. The future looked bright and full of promise. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and their new friends seemed eager to help them grow and prosper. But Jake could not shake the feeling that something important was being hidden from them. He decided to keep watching and waiting. After all, the most important thing about first contact was making sure it was also not the last contact humanity would ever have. 6 months had passed since the Zephyrians arrived, and Earth was changing fast. The new energy systems they had given humanity were working perfectly. Entire cities now ran on clean power that never seemed to run out. Hospitals were using alien medicine to cure diseases that had killed millions of people. It seemed like a golden age was beginning. But Captain Jake Morrison was starting to worry about things that others were not seeing. The energy systems worked great, but they needed special crystals to keep running. These crystals could only be bought from Zephyrian traders who visited Earth once a month. The aliens always had enough crystals to sell, but they were expensive. Earth was spending more and more money to keep the new power systems working. The alien medicine was even more troubling. Dr. Lisa Hamilton had been excited when the first treatments cured cancer patients in days instead of months. But now she was discovering something strange. The people who had been cured needed to take special pills every week to stay healthy. Without the pills, they got sick again, worse than before. "It doesn't make sense," Lisa told Jake as they walked through the medical section of Harmony 1. "The medicine should have fixed them completely. Why do they need ongoing treatment?" Jake did not have an answer, but he was asking more questions every day. The Zephyrians always had explanations for everything, but the explanations were getting more complicated. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez was working late in the communications center when she found something that made her hands shake. Hidden inside the normal Zephyrian communications were other signals, secret messages that used a different code entirely. She had been trying to decode them for weeks. She called Danny Chen, the station's computer expert, to help her. Danny was a quiet young man who understood machines better than most people understood other humans. Together, they worked through the night, trying to break the alien code. "Look at this," Danny said, pointing at patterns on his screen. "These signals aren't going to Zephyrian ships or colonies. They're going somewhere else entirely, to coordinates we've never seen before." Amy leaned closer to look. "Could they be talking to other alien species?" "Maybe," Danny said. "But if they are, why haven't they told us about them? I thought they wanted us to join some big galactic community." That same night, Dr. Hamilton was doing research in the Zephyrian section of the station. She had permission to study their biology and technology, but she was starting to see things that worried her. When the aliens thought no humans were watching, they acted differently. She had hidden cameras in the lab, officially to record their scientific work. But when she reviewed the recordings, she saw Zephyrians behaving in ways that did not match their peaceful image. They fought over equipment, they showed anger and frustration. Worst of all, she caught them doing something that made her stomach turn. One of the Zephyrians was scanning a human technician with a device Lisa had never seen before. The man stood still with empty eyes while the alien passed the device over his head. When it was finished, the technician walked away like nothing had happened, but Lisa could see he was moving differently, like part of him was missing. Lisa copied the recording and brought it to Jake the next morning. They watched it together in his private office, not speaking until it was over. "They're doing something to our people," Lisa said quietly. "That man, Peter Williams, I know him. He used to laugh and joke all the time. Now he barely speaks to anyone." Jake felt cold anger growing in his chest. "How many others?" "I don't know yet," Lisa said, "but I'm going to find out." Meanwhile, reports were coming in from human colonies at the edge of space. Ships were disappearing, always in areas where Zephyrian vessels had been seen recently. The official report said it was just bad luck. Space was dangerous and accidents happened. But Jake was starting to see a pattern. Captain Susan Moore of the cargo ship Destiny had sent a message just before her ship vanished. Her voice was scared and confused as she reported strange readings on her sensors. "Something big is out here," she had said. "Multiple ships, but they're not showing up right on our scanners. They're trying to jam our communications." That was the last anyone heard from the Destiny or her crew of 23 people. Admiral Baker was getting worried too. He had been tracking the missing ships and found something disturbing. All of them had been carrying important cargo, new technologies, rare metals, or scientists traveling to research stations. It was like someone was targeting specific ships for specific reasons. "I want a full investigation," Baker told Jake during one of their private meetings. "But we have to be careful. If the Zephyrians are involved in this, we can't let them know we suspect anything." Jake nodded. "What about the politicians? They're so excited about the alien partnership they won't want to hear bad news." Baker's face was grim. "The politicians are making deals that will make us completely dependent on Zephyrian technology within 2 years. If something goes wrong, we won't be able to defend ourselves." Amy Rodriguez made her breakthrough 3 days later. She had been working with Danny to decode more of the secret messages when they finally cracked part of the alien code. What they found made them both sit in shocked silence. The message was short but terrifying. It talked about something called the Harvesting Protocol, and mentioned timeframes that matched exactly with Earth's growing dependence on Zephyrian technology. It also mentioned other species, with names that sounded like they came from different worlds. But the most frightening part was a phrase that appeared over and over in the messages: "Resource integration proceeding as planned." Danny looked at Amy with wide, scared eyes. "They're not talking about trade or friendship. They're talking about us like we're things to be used." Amy nodded slowly. "We need to tell Captain Morrison right away." When Jake heard what they had discovered, he felt like the ground was falling away under his feet. Everything the Zephyrians had said about peace and friendship was a lie. They were planning something terrible, and humanity was walking right into their trap. But he also knew they needed more proof before they could convince anyone else. The politicians and most of the public loved the aliens too much to believe bad things about them without overwhelming evidence. Keep working on those messages, Jake told Amy and Danny. Find out everything you can. But be careful. If they discover what you're doing, we might all disappear like those missing ships. Dr. Hamilton was conducting her own investigation. She had started testing the alien medicine more carefully and found something that made her sick with fear. The medicine was not just treating diseases. It was changing human biology in subtle ways, making people weaker and more dependent on continued treatment. Worse, she discovered that the Zephyrians had been collecting detailed biological samples from every human they treated. Blood, tissue, even genetic material was being quietly gathered and stored in alien databases. They're studying us, she told Jake. Not to help us, but to understand how we work. It's like they're preparing for something. Jake put together what everyone had learned. The missing ships, the secret communications, the biological experiments, the growing dependence on alien technology. It all pointed to one terrible conclusion. The Zephyrians had not come to help humanity join a galactic community. They had come to harvest humanity like farmers harvesting crops. And Earth's leaders were helping them do it, without even knowing what was happening. The question now was whether they could find enough proof to convince others before it was too late. And more importantly, whether humanity would be able to fight back against enemies who had been planning this for much longer than anyone realized. Jake looked out at the stars and wondered how many other species had faced this same moment, this same terrible realization that their new friends were actually their worst enemies. Time was running out and the real fight was about to begin. Danny Chen had not slept for 3 days. His eyes were red and his hands shook as he typed on his computer. But he could not stop working. He had finally broken through the main Zephyrian communication codes, and what he found made him feel sick. "Captain, Morrison needs to see this right now," he told Amy Rodriguez as she brought him another cup of coffee. Jake arrived within minutes, followed by Dr. Hamilton. They gathered around Danny's screen as he showed them what he had discovered. "The Zephyrians have been talking to their homeworlds," Danny said, his voice quiet and scared. "But they're not just talking about us. Look at these files." The screen showed lists of names, but they were not human names. Strange words like Colovian and Thraxi and Mentari appeared again and again. Next to each name were numbers, population counts, resource estimates, and something called integration completion dates. "These are other species," Dr. Hamilton said, her face pale. "Other alien races the Zephyrians have contacted." "Were," Danny corrected her. "Past tense. Look at the dates." Jake studied the screen more carefully. The dates went back hundreds of years. The Colovians had been integrated in 2156, the Thraxi in 2089, the Mentari in 2203. There were dozens of them, all with completion dates in the past. "What does integration mean?" Jake asked, though he was starting to fear the answer. Danny clicked to another file. This one showed detailed reports about each species. The Colovians had been peaceful traders, much like humans were becoming. The Thraxi had been warriors who had fought back hard. The Mentari had been scientists who tried to negotiate, but all the reports ended the same way. Complete resource extraction, population relocated for labor purposes, technology absorbed into collective databases, worlds prepared for Zephyrian colonization. "They've done this before," Amy said, her voice barely a whisper. "They've done this to dozens of other species." Dr. Hamilton was reading through the biological data files. What she found made her hands shake. They have detailed studies of every species they've contacted, how their bodies work, what diseases they get, how their minds function. It's like a hunting guide. Jake felt like he was drowning in horrible truth. "How long do we have?" Danny pulled up another file, this one with Earth's name at the top. "According to their timeline, they expect to complete our integration within 18 months. They're ahead of schedule because we've been so cooperative." The word cooperative hit Jake like a punch to the stomach. Humanity had been so eager to accept Zephyrian gifts that they had made the aliens' job easier than ever before. "We need to tell Admiral Baker immediately," Jake said. But as he reached for his communication device, alarms started blaring throughout the station. The voice of the station's computer filled the air. Emergency. Hull breach in Section 7. All personnel evacuate immediately. But Jake knew there had been no accident. Through the station windows, he could see Zephyrian ships moving into attack positions. Their beautiful crystal hulls were opening to reveal weapons that looked like nothing humans had ever seen. "They know," Amy said. "They know we found out." Ambassador. Veltar Nethys appeared on every screen in the station at the same time. His beautiful face was no longer smiling, and his voice was cold and hard. "Citizens of Earth," he said, "your government has betrayed the trust we offered. Some of your people have been spying on private Zephyrian communications. This cannot be allowed to continue." Jake grabbed his emergency communicator and tried to reach Admiral Baker, but all he got was static. The Zephyrians were jamming all human communications. "We had hoped to complete your integration peacefully," Veltar continued on the screens. "But if you insist on being difficult, we will proceed with more direct methods. Surrender now, and your species will be treated with the same kindness we have shown to all others." Dr. Hamilton was frantically copying files from the Zephyrian database onto portable storage devices. "We have to get this information to Earth," she said. "People need to know what's really happening." But even as she worked, Jake could see more Zephyrian ships appearing in space around them. There were dozens of them, far more than had ever been visible before. They had been hiding, waiting for this moment. Danny was trying to send emergency messages to Earth through hidden communication channels he had built. His fingers flew over the keyboard as he uploaded everything they had learned. "If I can get this out, maybe someone down there will be able to warn others." The station shook as Zephyrian weapons hit the outer hull. These were not the gentle, peaceful beings who had first arrived 6 months ago. These were predators who had finally decided to show their true faces. Jake led his team toward the escape pods, but they found their path blocked. Zephyrian soldiers had boarded the station, moving through the corridors like ghosts. Up close, Jake could see they were not just tall and beautiful. They were also strong and fast, with weapons that seemed to be part of their own bodies. "This way," Amy whispered, leading them through maintenance tunnels she had memorized during her months on the station. As they crawled through the narrow spaces, they could hear the sounds of other humans being captured. Some were fighting back, but their weapons were no match for Zephyrian technology. Others were trying to surrender, but the aliens were taking everyone prisoner regardless. They reached the escape pod bay just as the last pods were launching. Through the windows, Jake could see some of them making it away from the station, heading toward Earth. Maybe some of the information would get through, but their own escape pod would not start. Danny worked frantically with the controls while Amy and Dr. Hamilton watched for Zephyrian soldiers. "The launch systems have been disabled," Danny said. "We're trapped." That was when they heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Slow, patient footsteps that barely made any sound. The Zephyrians were coming for them. Jake pulled out his sidearm, knowing it would probably not help much against alien technology. But he was not going to surrender without a fight. The door opened, and 3 Zephyrian soldiers entered. They moved like they had all the time in the world, completely confident that humans could not hurt them. Captain Morrison, one of them, said in perfect English, "Ambassador Veltar wishes to speak with you." "Tell your ambassador he can go to hell," Jake replied. The Zephyrian tilted its head like it was confused by the words. "Your species has such interesting expressions. We have studied many languages, but humans always find new ways to show defiance. It will be useful data for future integrations." Dr. Hamilton stepped forward. "How many others? How many species have you destroyed?" "Destroyed?" The alien seemed genuinely surprised by the word. "We do not destroy. We integrate. We preserve what is useful and recycle what is not. Your species will live on as part of the collective, just as all the others do." "That's not living," Amy said angrily. "That's slavery." "You will understand better once the process is complete," the Zephyrian said. "Resistance only makes integration more difficult. The Colovians learned this. The Thraxi learned this. Even the mighty Vorlans learned this eventually." Jake felt a chill at the mention of the Vorlans. He had seen that name in the files, listed as a species that had taken the Zephyrians almost 50 years to fully integrate. They had been warriors, like humans, but even they had eventually fallen. "What do you want with us?" Jake asked. "You will come with us to meet the ambassador. He has questions about your little spying operation. Specifically, he wants to know how much information you managed to send to your homeworld." As the Zephyrians led them through the station, Jake saw the results of their attack. Humans were being loaded onto alien ships, but they were not being hurt. Instead, they looked confused and empty, like the technician Dr. Hamilton had seen being scanned weeks earlier. "What are you doing to them?" Dr. Hamilton asked. "Preparing them for integration?" The Zephyrian replied. "Mental conditioning is much more efficient than physical force. They will be much happier once they stop trying to resist." Jake realized with growing horror that this was how the Zephyrians had integrated all those other species. Not through war and conquest, but through technology that could control minds and change the way people thought. As they were forced aboard a Zephyrian ship, Jake looked back at the station that had been humanity's first step into the galaxy. Now it was becoming the place where that step had led them into a trap. But he also knew that some of the escape pods had made it away. Danny's emergency transmissions might have gotten through. Down on Earth, Admiral Baker and others would be receiving warnings about what was really happening. The question was whether humanity would believe the warnings in time, and whether they would be able to fight back against enemies who had perfected the art of conquest over thousands of years. The real war was about to begin. Admiral Charles Baker stood in the underground command center beneath Colorado Springs, staring at screens that showed the end of the world as he knew it. The emergency messages from Harmony 1 had arrived just hours before Zephyrian ships appeared, in orbit around Earth. Now those same ships were demanding humanity's immediate surrender. "How many ships?" Baker asked his communications officer. "Over 200, sir. They appeared out of nowhere like they were invisible until they wanted us to see them." Baker felt old and tired, but also angry. He had known something was wrong with the aliens from the beginning. Now his worst fears were coming true, and Earth's military was not ready for this kind of fight. Most of Earth's weapons had been reduced or scrapped as part of the peace agreements with the Zephyrians. The aliens had convinced humanity's leaders that weapons were no longer necessary in a peaceful galaxy. Now Earth had barely 50 combat ships left, and they were scattered across the solar system. "Sir," called Lieutenant Tony Rodriguez, Amy's younger brother who worked in intelligence, "we're getting reports from the outer colonies. Ships are under attack everywhere, but some of the colonists are fighting back." Baker looked at the tactical display. Red dots showed Zephyrian attacks on human settlements throughout the solar system, but green dots showed places where humans were somehow holding their ground. "What's different about the green zones?" Baker asked. Tony worked at his computer for a moment. "They're all places where we still had old-style weapons and equipment. The mining colonies, the research stations, places that never got the new Zephyrian technology." Baker understood immediately. The aliens had been weakening humanity by making them dependent on advanced technology that could be controlled or shut off. But the places that still used human-built equipment were harder to disable. Dr. Lisa Hamilton was in a Zephyrian prison ship, but she was not sitting quietly. The aliens had made a mistake when they captured her with her research equipment still in her hands. Hidden in her medical scanner was a discovery that could change everything. She had been studying Zephyrian biology for months, and she had found their weakness. The aliens' beautiful crystal-like bodies were actually very fragile. They needed constant energy from their ship's systems to stay healthy. More importantly, their telepathic abilities that made them so dangerous worked on specific frequencies that could be disrupted. Using tools hidden in her medical kit, Lisa built a small device that could generate the right kind of interference. When she activated it, the Zephyrian guards outside her cell suddenly stumbled and grabbed their heads in pain. She quickly shut off the device and pretended to be asleep. But now she knew how to hurt them. Captain Jake Morrison was being held in a different part of the ship. The Zephyrians had been questioning him for hours, trying to find out how much information had been sent to Earth. He told them nothing, but he could see that his captors were getting frustrated. "Your resistance is pointless," Ambassador Veltar told him. Even now your homeworld is surrendering. Your leaders are wise enough to accept the inevitable. But Jake could see something in the alien's eyes that looked like worry. If everything was going according to plan, why did Veltar seem so concerned? The answer came when Danny Chen managed to hack into the ship's communication system from his own cell. He had hidden a small computer device in his shoe, and the aliens had not found it during their search. Using the ship's own network against them, he accessed their tactical reports. What he found made him smile for the first time in days. Earth was not surrendering. Instead, Admiral Baker had activated something called Protocol 7, a secret plan that had been developed in case of alien invasion. All across human space, old weapons were being pulled out of storage. Mining lasers were being converted into ship weapons. Cargo haulers were being turned into warships. Most importantly, humans were remembering how to fight without depending on alien technology. The Zephyrians had expected an easy victory, like they had achieved with dozens of other species. Instead, they were facing a war. On Earth, Baker was coordinating the resistance from his underground bunker. The surface cities were under Zephyrian control, but the underground facilities and remote outposts were still free. Humans were using communication systems the aliens did not know about, old radio networks that had been kept running for emergencies just like this. All units, this is command. Baker spoke into his microphone. The enemy wants us to surrender because they think we cannot fight without their technology. Let's show them how wrong they are. Reports started coming in from around the globe. A group of Canadian miners had destroyed a Zephyrian landing craft using modified drilling equipment. Australian ranchers were using their cattle tracking satellites to coordinate attacks on alien patrols. Even children were helping, using toy drones to spy on enemy positions. The Zephyrians were discovering that humans were not like the other species they had conquered. When pushed into a corner, humans did not just fight back. They fought dirty, using tactics and weapons the aliens had never seen before. Dr. Hamilton managed to contact other human prisoners using the ship's communication system. Her electromagnetic interference device could do more than just hurt individual Zephyrians. If she could build a bigger version and get it to the ship's power core, she could disable the entire vessel. Working together with prisoners throughout the ship, she began gathering the materials she needed. The Zephyrians had captured many human scientists and engineers. Now their knowledge was being turned against their captors. Jake found himself working with a group that included Amy Rodriguez and several other prisoners from Harmony 1. Using their combined skills, they had discovered how to override some of the ship's security systems. The aliens are not as smart as they think, Amy whispered as they worked. Their technology is advanced, but it's also complicated. Too many systems depending on each other. If we can create failures in the right places, the whole ship could shut down. Meanwhile, Danny was sending information to the human resistance. He had mapped the aliens' command structure and found their communication frequencies. Most importantly, he had discovered that the Zephyrians were not getting reinforcements from their homeworlds. The ships attacking Earth were all they had in this part of the galaxy. They overextended themselves, Danny explained to the others during a brief meeting in the ship's maintenance section. They thought this would be quick and easy, so they did not bring their main fleet. If we can hold out long enough, they might have to retreat. Back on Earth, Admiral Baker was learning the same thing from captured alien equipment. The Zephyrians were powerful, but they were not invincible. Their ships needed special fuel that they could not make from local materials. Their weapons required rare crystals that were running low. Most importantly, their mind control technology did not work on humans who knew it was being used against them. They've been fighting civilians and slaves for so long, they forgot how to fight soldiers, Baker told his staff. Every species they conquered before gave up when the fight got hard. But humans don't give up. The resistance was growing stronger every day. Human ships that had seemed helpless against alien technology were finding ways to fight back. Earth's orbital platforms, built for peaceful research, were being converted into weapons platforms using equipment the aliens had not even noticed. Children who had played video games were now operating drones against alien forces. Farmers were using their knowledge of the land to set up ambushes. Even elderly people were contributing, using their memories of old wars to teach tactics the aliens had never encountered. The Zephyrians had made their biggest mistake when they assumed humans would react like every other species they had conquered. They thought advanced technology and overwhelming force would make humanity surrender quickly and quietly. Instead, they had awakened something in humans that they did not understand. The same stubborn refusal to give up that had carried humanity. Through wars, disasters, and the long journey to the stars was now focused entirely on driving the aliens away. The battle for Earth was far from over, but for the first time since the attack began, Admiral Baker was starting to believe that humanity might actually win. The question was whether they could hold out long enough to prove that some species could not be conquered, no matter how advanced their enemies might be. The final battle began when Dr. Lisa Hamilton activated her electromagnetic weapon in the heart of the Zephyrian command ship. The device she had built from medical equipment sent waves of interference through the alien vessel, causing lights to flicker and systems to fail throughout the ship. Zephyrian guards stumbled in the corridors, clutching their heads as their telepathic abilities were scrambled. For the first time since their capture, the human prisoners had a chance to fight back. Captain Jake Morrison kicked down the door of his cell as the electronic locks failed. Throughout the ship, other prisoners were doing the same thing. Engineers, scientists, and soldiers who had been captured from Harmony 1 were now free and angry. "Everyone to the main command center," Jake shouted as he ran through the corridors. "We take control of this ship, and we use it against the rest of their fleet." Ambassador Veltar was in the command center when the humans burst through the doors. The beautiful alien who had once spoken so smoothly about peace now looked panicked and confused. His crystal-like skin was flickering with unstable energy patterns. "This is impossible," Veltar said, his voice no longer calm and wise. "No species has ever successfully resisted integration. You are primitives. You should not be able to interfere with our technology." Jake walked up to the alien leader and smiled grimly. "That's your problem right there. You think we're primitives, but we're survivors, and survivors do whatever it takes to win." Danny Chen was already at the ship's computer systems, his fingers flying over alien controls he was learning to understand in real time. "I'm uploading everything from their databases to Earth," he called out. "Information about every species they've conquered, every world they've destroyed, every lie they've ever told." Amy Rodriguez had found the ship's weapons controls. "Captain, their fleet is trying to retreat. Should I stop them?" Jake looked at the tactical display showing hundreds of Zephyrian ships pulling back from Earth. Part of him wanted to let them go, to end the fighting, but he thought about all the other species the aliens had destroyed, and all the future species they would target if they were allowed to escape. "Lock on to their command ships," he ordered. "Send them a message they'll never forget." The captured Zephyrian vessel turned its weapons on its own fleet. Alien ships that had seemed invincible just hours before were now being destroyed by their own technology, operated by the humans they had tried to enslave. Down on Earth, Admiral Baker watched the battle from his command center with growing amazement. Not only were the aliens retreating, but human forces were actually winning. Mining ships armed with improvised weapons were chasing Zephyrian cruisers away from Earth's colonies. Defense platforms built from old human technology were proving more effective than anyone had imagined. "Sir," Lieutenant Tony Rodriguez called out, "we're getting a transmission from the captured alien ship. It's Captain Morrison." Jake's face appeared on the main screen, and Baker felt relief flood through him. "Admiral, we've taken control of the Zephyrian command vessel. Dr. Hamilton found their weakness and we're using it against them." "What's the situation up there, Captain?" "Their fleet is broken, sir. About half their ships are destroyed and the rest are running for deep space. But that's not the best part." Jake's expression became grimmer. "We found their prisoner processing facilities. They've been keeping representatives from every species they conquered, using them as slaves and test subjects. There are survivors up here, Admiral. Survivors from dozens of worlds who have been waiting centuries for someone to fight back." Baker felt a chill run down his spine. "How many?" "Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. The Zephyrians didn't just destroy other species. They kept the useful ones alive as tools. Dr. Hamilton appeared on the screen next to Jake. Admiral, I've been analyzing their biological data. The Zephyrians are not naturally aggressive. They were a peaceful species once, but they discovered that conquering other worlds was easier than developing their own technology. They've been doing this for so long they forgot how to live without taking from others. What does that mean for us? Baker asked. It means they're parasites, Lisa replied. And like all parasites, they die when their host learns to fight back. The weeks that followed were unlike anything in human history. Ships from Earth traveled to the coordinates they had found in Zephyrian databases, searching for other survivors of the alien conquests. What they found was a hidden network of species that had been waiting generations for someone strong enough to challenge their captors. The Colovians were still alive, working as technical slaves on Zephyrian mining worlds. The Thraxi warriors had been used as test subjects for alien weapons. The brilliant Mentari scientists had been forced to develop new technologies for their conquerors, but now they were free, and they were angry. Captain Jake Morrison, promoted to admiral after the battle, found himself leading the strangest fleet in galactic history. Human ships flew alongside vessels from dozens of different worlds, all united by their shared hatred of Zephyrian oppression. It's ironic, he told Dr. Hamilton as they watched the mixed fleet through the observation windows of their captured command ship. The Zephyrians wanted to create a galactic community under their control. Instead, they created one united against them. The final confrontation came when the Liberation Fleet reached the Zephyrian homeworlds. What they found there shocked even the veterans who had seen the alien prison camps. The Zephyrian homeworld was dying. Centuries of taking from other species instead of developing their own resources had left their planet barren and poisoned. The beautiful crystal cities were crumbling, and the population was sick and desperate. They destroyed themselves, Amy Rodriguez observed as she studied the sensor readings. All that conquest and slavery, and they still couldn't save their own world. The remaining Zephyrian leaders tried one last time to negotiate. They offered to share their remaining technology, to make peace, to find some way to coexist. But their words rang hollow after centuries of lies and betrayal. It was a Colovian captain who gave the final answer. Her species had been the first to fall to Zephyrian deception, and she had spent 200 years as a slave before her liberation. You spoke of peace, she transmitted to the alien fleet, but you plotted against every species you met. Now face the consequences of your actions. The battle was brief. The Zephyrian home fleet, weakened by centuries of dependence on stolen technology and slave labor, could not stand against the combined forces of their former victims. When it was over, Admiral Jake Morrison stood once again on an observation deck, but this time he was not alone. Representatives from 30 different species stood with him, watching as their combined fleets began the work of rebuilding a galaxy free from fear. What happens now? Asked Dr. Hamilton. Jake looked out at the stars, thinking about all the worlds that were now free to develop their own destinies. Now we do what the Zephyrians never could. We build a real galactic community, one based on cooperation instead of conquest. And if we meet other species like the Zephyrians, Jake's expression hardened. Then we show them what happens when predators meet prey that has learned to hunt back. The galaxy would never be the same. For the first time in millennia, it belonged not to conquerors, but to the free species who had proven that even the most advanced predators could be stopped by those willing to fight for their freedom. Humanity had entered the galactic community not as victims or conquerors, but as liberators. And across the stars, young civilizations would grow up knowing that there were those who would stand against any force that threatened their independence. The age of the Zephyrian collective was over. The age of true galactic freedom had begun.